Hello, I'm Guy, and this is Guy Robot.
Hello and welcome to the latest of my blockchain Bonanza videos. For those of you that have been watching this, you'll know that I'm doing a video every day this month about blockchain and cryptocurrency technologies, as I've spent the last month squirreled away and working on a cryptocurrency related startup. It's an investment fund that invests using proprietary AI algorithms into cryptocurrencies. Check that out at smartift.com. Link in the description below. But today I'm going to look at smart contracts and, well, what actually are smart contracts? I've mentioned them before when discussing Ethereum tokens and what Ethereum is, but I think they deserve a really in-depth look at because to some extent this is the future. A smart contract is fundamentally some code that sits in the blockchain. Now that doesn't really make much sense because how can code sit in a blockchain and how do you interact with it? It's not a website, there's no front end, there's nothing to see. The parallel for this is comparing it to a still relatively new way of doing software called serverless architectures. So you may or may not have heard of something called AWS Lambda, which is Amazon Web Services Lambda technology. If you've got Amazon Alexa, you can write code using AWS Lambda. And how it works is instead of building a full application, you write just a single small bit of code, which has a method or two in there, which takes some defined parameters. So in the case of Alexa, you might have a parameter that is somebody's name. You might call it the hello method and the input is the name. And you say to Alexa, hello, I'm Guy, or something like that. And your method gets called with Guy, your code runs, and then your code returns something back that Alexa says. So Alexa might go, hello, Guy. But the idea is that all that your code is takes in some data, processes it locally, and chucks out a response. It doesn't deal with the Alexa side or anything else. It's just this small bit of code that sits on Amazon's infrastructure. And more applications can be built like this. So you just build small chunks of code that just do one very defined thing, and then you orchestrate them together somehow. And that's the closest parallel I can think to what a smart contract is. So how it works is using the Ethereum virtual machine. The Ethereum virtual machine is pretty much like its own computer. Much like at the very basic level of programming, you've got assembly, where you can read data from memory, write data to memory, move it around and do various operations. And that's what everything builds up from. The Ethereum virtual machine is the same basis. It's almost like its own computer written in software that runs smart contracts. And although I'm going to talk about Ethereum here, it's worth noting this same concept can apply across any different blockchain, but Ethereum is probably the most used and most well known for smart contracts at the moment. So I, as a software developer, could decide I want to write some code. I could do my own hello world for a smart contract. So I would write some code that takes in my name, and then what it could do is write a message into the transaction block that says hello Guy. So first of all, I write my code that reads in Guy as a name and then writes something to the blockchain that says, hello Guy. I take that code and I deploy it to the blockchain, which is done with a special transaction where I put my code in it, and then it comes back and it gives me an address for that code. If I want to interact with it, all I do then is send a hello, I'm Guy message to that code, and then what will happen is that transaction will be able to have some data in it that says, hello Guy, comes back to me. It's a fairly basic example, but what will happen is the code is put in the blockchain. And so if you ever look at that contract address, you know what the code is. When you're sending the hello message, you'll run it locally. It will check that it works and doesn't crash. If that's good, it will then just send a message to the blockchain that says, send hello, I'm Guy. Then when the transaction gets mined, whenever they mine it, what will happen is it will rerun the code. It will put the hello message in there, and then that will be stored in the blockchain forever. So it will keep carrying on like that. So much in the same way that all other aspects of a blockchain are immutable, so are smart contracts and their output. They can change from one transaction to the next as they make incremental differences. So it might store that it's already spoken to Guy, but it will happen one by one and layer on top of each other so that you can always see that history through it. And that's a really key thing. They are immutable. Once you have deployed a smart contract, you cannot change it. It can change the data that's stored in it that will build up, but you'll still be able to see the old versions. But the code itself cannot be changed. There are patterns for doing different things where you deploy another smart contract and in effect redirect. But that's not widely used yet, not necessarily accepted, and depending on what you're trying to do, there's then arguments that that defeats the whole point of it in the first place. One of the benefits of smart contracts is they're immutable. If you put some code out there and you say it does this, people can go, yes, it does that. So I'm going to talk through different things you could do with it in the future, but one of them is casinos. You can prove that your casino is fair rather than scamming customers because they can read the code and see that it works. If you have a way to change that code, it defeats the whole point of that. And a casino is a long way from the hello world, but the whole logic to it would just be accept a new call that says roll dice, generate a number 1 to 6, and then depending on what that is, make a payout. And because it's all in the Ethereum network, you can obviously receive and send payments in Ethereum. So you might charge 1 Ether to do that transaction. If it's successful, you pay out 2. Otherwise, you keep all of it. And although people aren't going to interact with it directly from a wallet, what you can do is build a website that sits on top of it, or you can build a desktop application or a mobile application that sit on top of it. So this fundamentally then replaces what a lot of your back-end processing and database systems would be, but makes it public so people can see what code you're running and ensure that you're doing what you've said you will. So this is quite a detailed and complex topic, and I don't want to skim over it too much. So I'm going to look in the next few videos at some examples of smart contracts, issues with smart contracts, the future of smart contracts, and then I'm going to start taking a dive into some of the code and how to do coding for smart contracts. I'll probably talk about this for several hours, and this whole idea of my blockchain bonanza started as an hour-long video I was going to do just on smart contracts, and I've tried to break it up a bit more. I hope you've enjoyed today's video. If you have, please thumbs up and leave a comment below. Please also go and take a look at smartift.com. It's the cryptocurrency trading fund that's now open for investment with up to 40% returns. And you can also check me out and contact me directly, GuyRobotTV on Twitter. Thanks.